My name is Detective Pierce. I've seen things that make most men drink themselves into silence. Things that fester behind polished doors, hidden under the polite smile of normalcy. After the Ashcroft Asylum case, I told myself I needed a break, some quiet. A stretch of road and nothing but time. I took to the countryside. West Alder, a region too forgotten to be dangerous, too quiet to hide any real evil. Or so I thought. The fog was thick that evening. It clung to my windshield like a film of sweat, refusing to let go. My hands were steady on the wheel, but something in my chest felt off. Hunger gnawed at me, but more than that, a sensation I've come to trust over the years, a cold signal, and my gut told me I was heading towards something. That's when I saw it. Tucked in between tall black pines was a small stone building, flickering with warm candlelight behind the windows. Elegant, old-world architecture, French. The sign above the heavy oak door read, Le Couteau Rouge, the Red Knife. There was no parking lot, no signage along the road, just this one place, standing alone where it shouldn't be. My instincts whispered against going in, but hunger, real or otherwise, won. I stepped out of the car and into the mist. The air was colder near the building, the kind of cold that felt personal. As I reached the door, I noticed the handle, shaped like a twisted vine, almost organic. Inside, the warmth was immediate, like stepping through a curtain into another world. Low golden light from chandeliers, deep red wallpaper, white linen tablecloths, the smell of roasted meat and aged wine, and silence. No laughter, no clinking glasses, not even the subtle noise of a kitchen, just silence. A man appeared from a hallway to my right, tall, pale, impeccably dressed in a black suit and crimson tie. His hair was slicked back, and his smile was thin but practiced. "Welcome to Le Couteau Rouge," he said. "We've been expecting you." That sentence hit wrong. I hadn't called ahead. No one even knew I was out here. "I'm just passing through," I said, trying to sound casual. "Didn't think anyone else was out here." He gestured toward a small table near the center. "No trouble at all. Please, allow us the honor of your presence." I took the seat, back to the wall, habit, and scanned the room. There were other patrons, maybe 4 or 5, seated far apart. But none of them were eating. They were all still, silent. One woman stared down at her empty plate, unmoving. A man in the far corner looked like he hadn't blinked in minutes. The waiter placed a menu in front of me. No prices. Just names. Bone consommé, red veal tartare, tongue en croûte. I flipped the page, and something odd caught my eye. The dessert section was titled, Final Course, and beneath it, one item, Closure. I looked up. "Is this some kind of performance restaurant?" The waiter smiled again, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Everything here has meaning, Monsieur Pierce." I froze. "How do you know my name?" But he was already walking away, hands behind his back, disappearing into the corridor again. That was when I noticed something else. The walls, behind the floral wallpaper, under the low hum of the chandelier, there was something moving, subtle, like breathing. I stood slowly. The other diners didn't look up, didn't speak. I moved toward the hallway the waiter had come from. A deep unease pulled at me, as if I were walking into the belly of something old and waiting. The corridor was narrow. Velvet drapes hung in intervals, and I passed a mirror, tall and thin. For a moment, I thought my reflection was lagging behind me. I stopped. So did it. But its smile lingered too long. Further down, I heard voices, low and rhythmic, a chant. I turned a corner and found a small door at the end of the hall. It was slightly ajar. Candlelight spilled through the crack. Inside, 5 people stood around a table. They wore chef whites, but they weren't cooking. On the table was a slab of meat, raw and arranged in an unsettling pattern. Tools laid out beside it, carving knives, bone saws, a branding iron. And above it all, etched into the stone wall in dried crimson, "We feed to remember. We feed to forget." My foot creaked on a floorboard. They all turned toward me at once. Their eyes were glassy, hollow, their smiles too wide. "You shouldn't be here," one of them whispered. I stepped back, reached for my coat pocket. My badge was there. My gun wasn't. Another voice from behind me. "Detective Pierce, so good of you to join us." It was the waiter. And now, the corridor behind me was gone. Only the dining room remained, transformed. The diners were gone. The tables were empty. Blood trails marked the floor like place settings. The room shifted. I was no longer a guest. I was the main course. The moment I turned, the door I'd come through was no longer there. Only a solid wall of dark stone, lined with rusted hooks and curled parchment nailed in rows. Recipes, I realized, but not in any language I knew. The symbols danced at the edges of comprehension, and the longer I looked, the more my head throbbed. The waiter stood between me and the cult-like chefs, hands folded, expression calm. "Most guests don't make it this far," he said. "But then again, you're not most guests, are you?" "I want answers," I said. My voice echoed unnaturally in the room. "You came for a meal," he said, voice flat. "And now you'll be consumed, in your own way." My eyes flicked to the utensils on the ritual table, more surgical tools than kitchenware. The thing on the table wasn't a cut of animal meat. The bone structure, the fingers, it had once been human. I stepped back, drawing a knife I'd taken from the dining room. It was long, too polished, and disturbingly warm in my hand. "Detective Pierce," said one of the chefs, her eyes dilated wide, her pupils nearly gone. "You are here to sever the hunger. You're the knife this place has waited for." Then she plunged her hand into the meat on the table. No blood spilled. Instead, the lights flickered, and the walls rippled like liquid. The restaurant was changing again. Suddenly I was standing in a familiar room, the interrogation chamber from the Bayfield precinct, where I'd once questioned a man who claimed he ate dreams to stay alive. But this time, I was seated, and across from me sat myself. I blinked. The version of me on the other side smiled. His eyes were hollow, mouth too wide, fingers twitching. "You've consumed so many stories, detective," he rasped, "but you never learn how to escape one." I gritted my teeth. "This isn't real." "But it is," he said. "This place feeds on people like you, those who carry memories soaked in guilt. Each patron was a bearer of sins they couldn't forget. Now they're part of the menu." The hallucination broke. I was back in the dining room, but it was deteriorated now. The candles burned black. The walls peeled in fleshy sheets. The other patrons had become statues of salt and ash, their faces frozen in screams. The waiter stood by the entrance, no longer human. His limbs were elongated, his smile too wide to be skin. "The crimson cutlery has served for centuries," he said, "but tonight the kitchen closes." I noticed something in his chest, a glint of metal, just behind the ribcage. The handle of a knife. My knife. Instinct took over. I ran forward, ducking under a sweeping arm, and drove the blade into his chest. A scream echoed not from his mouth but from the walls. The restaurant trembled. Light shattered above us. A void opened where the ceiling had been, swallowing chandeliers, tables, and salt statues alike. The waiter collapsed, twitching. The stone beneath my feet gave way. Then, darkness. Cold, wet, earthy. I woke up outside, covered in soil. My car sat beside the road where I'd first seen the building. No restaurant in sight. I checked my coat. Inside was a blood-stained napkin, folded neatly. On it, handwritten in perfect calligraphy, "You may leave the table, detective, but the hunger will follow." I drove straight back to the nearest town, Verneuil, population 600, a dot on the map mostly forgotten by time and modernity. I didn't sleep that night. Just sat in a motel room, staring at the napkin, the edges now curled like burned parchment. Every few minutes I would glance at the mirror, expecting to see someone, or something, else staring back. By morning I had a plan. The town's archives were kept in a single room above the post office, dusty and barely maintained. It took me hours to find what I was looking for. There, in a yellow newspaper from 1954, was a headline. 5 missing in local eatery fire. Crimson table reduced to ashes. The article described a boutique restaurant, infamous for serving avant-garde cuisine and attracting elite clientele from all over the state. It had burned to the ground under mysterious circumstances. The building's blueprints matched what I'd seen. There had been no survivors. The cause was never found. I ran the address through local records. The land had remained unclaimed for decades. Except, 2 weeks ago, a corporate entity purchased the property. Chevron War Holdings, LLC. Sounded like a cover. I contacted an old friend at the state police. Got access to corporate licensing records. Chevron Noir had no employees. Just a mailing address. A P.O. box in Shallow Creek, Nevada. The same address had previously been registered to Ritual Catering, Supper of Stars, and Maison Nera. All defunct, all associated with missing persons cases. It was a pattern. They moved from town to town, setting up for a brief time, drawing in curious diners with ads in obscure culinary blogs or whispered recommendations. A restaurant appearing out of nowhere, offering a once-in-a-lifetime sensory experience, and then, gone. Building vanished. Patrons never seen again. I returned to the site that night. Nothing but overgrown weeds and collapsed boards. No trace of the place I'd walked into. But in the dirt where the dining room would have been, I found silverware. One spoon. Still warm. And then I heard a voice, quiet and low, from somewhere just behind me. Back for seconds? I spun around. No one. But on the ground, carved into the earth, was a fresh word. Hungers. Closure. I wrote my report. No one would believe it, but I logged it anyway. I included the napkin, the newspaper clippings, the photo I took of the spoon before it corroded to ash in my motel drawer. Case closed? Maybe. But I know they'll open somewhere else again. Another town, another name, another menu. I wasn't the first to survive. I won't be the last. But I keep a knife in my coat now, not as a weapon, as a key, in case I ever walk through the wrong door again. Because some meals you don't get to finish, they finish you.